actually see your original teapot object again. And over here I've actually prepared a reference object. And now if you look at the two stacks, you'll notice that this one looks pretty normal, but this one has a thick grey line actually running through it at the top here, and that's actually the referencing line that indicates that below that point all of the modifiers that you see are actually instances of those from another object in the scene. And if we actually go in here and change the radius value, you can see they're changing each other. We can change the taper value, the curvature value, any of these values, and we can turn turbo smooth on and off and so on. Above the grey line, the actual instancing relationship actually ends, and the object effectively becomes unique from that point on. So to demonstrate that, I'll just go in here and I'll grab a twist modifier and I'll pop that on, and you can see I can actually twist the teapot, and you can see that over here the original teapot isn't actually being affected by that twist. Now, just to show that we've not actually broken the instancing below this grey line, we can go over here and we can go down to the radius and we can change that value. And as you can see, the reference over here is changing. I can change the taper value. I can change anything basically below this point over here, or rather in the original object I can change any of the modifiers. It'll have an immediate effect on this object over here. I can also go into the original object and I can add, let's add a noise modifier on here, and I'll just give it some strength. There we go, just give it some strength in those parameters, and I'll just change the scale of it somewhat. And so there you are, you can see it's actually deforming our teapot quite nicely. And you can see that exactly the same noise modifier has actually been applied to this reference over here. So again, anything which is done to the master object is also applied to the reference, and that makes it a very powerful feature. You can very quickly modify these references by actually going into the original object and applying a modifier, or making an adjustment in an existing modifier on there. So if I go over here, if I actually, just to make things a little bit clearer, I'll just get rid of this noise modifier. Now, an interesting thing is you can actually take any of the modifiers on a reference and actually apply it to the master object simply by dragging it and dropping it below the grey line. When you do that, it actually effectively updates the master object, and if we have any other references in our scene, they'll get updated also. So I'll just quickly show you that. I'll make another reference here, and I'll make one more reference over here. There we go. So we've got a bunch of different references. I'll go into each one and I'll just make a small adjustment. With this one, let's say I'll put a lattice on there, and I'll go into the control points and quickly just do something with those. Just move it over here maybe. And for this object, I'll put an edit mesh modifier on. And there it is. And I'll just go in and select some faces, and I'll delete those. There we go. So now you can see we have our original object. We have a reference here, a reference here, and a reference here, and each one of these references is kind of unique to each other due to the fact that we've added modifiers on and made changes, but they're all reliant on the original object here. So if I go into this object and I change the radius again, you can see each one of those references is changing. I can change the taper, and again those other ones are changing as well. So that's pretty cool. We've got exactly the same topology up to a certain point, up to the point where we've got this grey line, and from that point on then the topology branches. Now let's say we wanted to take this twist modifier and have it applied to all of our teapots. As I said, we can just grab it, drag it down, and leave go. And now you can see it's actually been applied to all of the objects, and that's because effectively it's been transferred onto the stack of the original teapot here. So as you can see, referencing offers a really useful mixture of instancing and having a unique object. You've got instancing up to a certain point in the stack, and then from that point on the object becomes unique And as you can see, using the interface is actually quite flexible in the way you can rearrange modifiers and actually rejig the way your references are working. Let's actually have a look now at very quickly at how we actually make instance objects, instance modifiers, instance controllers, which we covered just briefly just now, and references. We'll just do that very quickly. The first thing we can do is we can do keyboard shortcuts, or we can use menus. If we go up to the edit menu, you can see we have an option here to clone, and you can see that the option is Control V. So if we do Control V, you can see we have the option to make a copy of the object, an instance of the object, or a reference of the object. So in this case, we'll copy it. I'll just move the copy over here, and it's unique. You can actually turn off the modifiers or change the taper values or anything, and you can see that's unique. So that isn't what we want. I'll just get rid of that again, and we'll copy it again, and in this case we'll say instance. And now if I move it, and if I change any of the values, you'll see that it's an instance object. So that's quite simply how you make an instance object. I'll just get rid of that. Oops, just killed off the actual modifier rather than the object. The second way that we can actually do it is we can use Shift on the keyboard. If you hold on your Shift key and you grab any of the transform gizmo elements and drag your object, you can actually move the object in that way and make a copy of it, or instance or reference. So I'll just leave that go, and again we've got an instance object. So you can see again I can go in and modify the taper modifier. You may have noticed from the menu when I actually did that, the third option is reference, and that's exactly what happens if we do that and we leave go. We've now actually got a reference object, and as we've just covered in the workflow, we've got all of the advantages that we were discussing about having a reference. So as you can see, I can apply unique modifiers to it, but I also have the ability to go in and modify the original object and have that affect the reference. So that's very quickly how we make a reference object, and you can see that's pretty easy and fast to do. If I copy this object, I'm just actually going to copy that across there. I'm going to go into the stack and I'm going to get rid of all of these modifiers. So we've got the unmodified teapot. The first way we're going to actually instance the modifier across is we'll actually go into the stack, select the modifier, right click to get up the right click menu, go down to copy, select the second object, go to its stack, right click, and paste instance. And that's actually pasted that modifier across as an instance, and you can see that we've got this italicized text here to actually show that that's the case. We'll do that again. I'll select the turbo smooth modifier, copy that, go onto our second object, right click, paste instance, and again we've got just to show that that's actually working, you can see I'll turn off isoline display, and you can see now both objects have got turbo smooth on them, and those are actually instances. So I can turn down the iterations and you can see that both objects get changed, and I can do the same thing with the taper modifier. I can adjust that, and that adjusts both objects. But as you can see, this object has the edit poly, this one does not, so they're not actually instance objects in the true sense. So that's how you actually instance modifiers across. Now it's actually worth bearing in mind at this point that I'm doing this manually using the interface, but another way of instancing objects and modifiers is via MaxScript, and that's actually a very powerful way of tackling instancing. The power comes from the fact that you can actually instance modifiers or instance objects in a mass way. As an example, let's say you create a scene where you have 50 chairs, and let's say you have a number of modifiers applied to those chairs, and you then want those modifiers instanced to other objects in your scene. Well, one way of doing it is by doing it manually and selecting with the interface and instancing across those modifiers one by one. Obviously that's going to be quite laborious. If you wanted to do it very, very quickly,